What's up, Buttercups? Let's just find ourselves here today. Really grateful for this time we have together. I think we might be lost. Let's just kind of get lost tonight. I'm Kristin. I'm here with you. You're safe. If anytime you need to leave or pause, we're still here for you. Made some blacklight posters with a little chicken. Love it. I hope your evening's cozy and safe. Good. Performative obligation is something that we are all reckoning with as our society is changing. A lot of things right now in the world, globally, politically, structurally, they're all changing really rapidly, and that change is being felt in all different sectors of our lives.
And I still think we see this in a lot of cultures, religious communities, a lot of groups where a woman's entire role is to sacrifice everything about herself for her child. So she might sacrifice her physical health, her mental health, her career, any dreams and wishes that she has for her own life. She may sacrifice her marriage, everything in order to be there for her child. And she will do this ultimately at her expense.
And listen, part of me knows that I'm triggered by this at times because I was 18 and asked to leave home. On top of that, I was pregnant. And you know what? I figured it out. It was incredibly difficult. And yes, 1987 was a much different time than 2023. But the reality is that if your kid is self-sufficient and resourceful enough and has enough grit and strength, they'll figure it out.
You know, where I live, the oil field was popping. People were making a ton of money. It was a good career. And we were excited to grind out those first few years not making great money because we saw a picture of a better future. And folks will work a shitty job if they love their boss. And they'll work a job where the boss sucks if they're making a lot of money.
Many of us have said, like, I don't just do things because it's a part of my culture or my religion or my family or my history. I don't just do things for no reason. I need to deconstruct it and think about it and see maybe like which parts of what I was doing doesn't work for me anymore, because I'm an individual with my own path. And sometimes that means taking stuff out and saying this was put here on purpose by people who did not have my best interests at heart. So I'm going to take that piece and put it down and not pick it back up again. But this piece over here, that was critical. That was vital. That was so important. And I see that now and I appreciate it in a new way because it's my choice. And I'm going to keep it.
Things have changed a lot over the last several decades, right? For a variety of reasons, more women are working outside of the house. Women have definitely reclaimed the sense of their own identity and saying, I'm not going to sacrifice everything about myself. I'm going to make sure that there's balance within my home so that I can also take care of myself and I can achieve things. And I'm going to find a way to be a good parent while also taking care of myself.
One of the major conflicts is between those of us who see no real incentive for performative obligation.
What about these entitled kids who think it's cool and want to say, oh my God, I have all this trauma, when there's no trauma? The therapists are filling their heads full of complete bullshit. Why is it always the parents' fault? When is the kid's going to step up and when is that child going to step up and take responsibility for their actions and their comments and their lack of respect?
And she is told that this is the way to be a good mother, right? If I sacrifice everything for my child, then I will be a good mother, and this will ultimately lead to a positive outcome in my children. Now, when you have a parent or a mother who has relentlessly sacrificed herself for her children and has given up everything that is important to her, and she has really nothing left outside of this identity of being a mother, and you have them being the parent of an adult who does not agree with this and who did not consent to this martyrdom, and now she is expecting her adult child to continue to fulfill her in this way. She wants the adult child to continue being the one that provides her with purpose, with a sense of identity, with really who she is as a person. And when she's not getting this from the adult child, there is a lot of resentment that builds.
But there are, for a lot of people, a sense of power in making those choices. And the way that you get there is through desperate despair. Like, you have to go through despair to be able to say, the structure I was in, the thing I was doing, it can crumble around me, and I feel like I would rather it all crumble around me than go on like this any longer. I just have to take a step and start taking this whole thing apart and seeing what is me and what is true.
The adult child also becomes very resentful of their parents. And it's like, why am I responsible in adulthood for being the person that gives you an identity and a sense of self and a purpose in this world? And they may not be willing to do that.
I don't want to do this. I don't like this. It's exhausting. It's expensive. I can't be all these people. Like, this is a fantasy that I can tolerate all of this abuse, exploitation, too much labor, doing all these things I don't want to do without getting chronically ill.
What it comes down to is they're not finding it easy to even get started because the apprenticeship pipeline is so fucked up. You got to know somebody to get in. Once you get in, people feel like they're not getting taught. The mentorship isn't there. The money's not great. And then as they look further into the future, they just don't see a way to really make the most of it. All these kids have 5 jobs, bro. They got a full-time gig. They got a side hustle. They're doing Uber Eats and DoorDash and grocery delivery. And then they're trying to do content creation on the side.
In this moment, that journey and that choice and that power and that decision-making is bumping up against this other idea that your social role and fulfilling that social role is an obligation that you ought to perform. And taking it apart and putting it back together again is like, why are you doing that? We already have a perfectly good structure right here. There's no reason for you to take it apart. It's put together already. It kind of seems like you're wasting everyone's time by like going off and doing some very strange activity where you deconstruct a structure that we've already put together for you. So there's sort of a tension that's really in the air right now between performative obligation and deconstruction, individuation, courage. Yeah.
My take is that they are exerting such control and rage at the lack of control with the people that, their children, if we take their children as an example, who are not complying with their vision of what life should look like or what the parent-child relationship should look like in adulthood, that all of that is a manifestation of an unwillingness to process grief.
Okay. So Erich Fromm called this like performative obligation thing. He called it automaton conformity, and it's like a type of way of dealing with the existential dread and anxiety that we all feel. Is like, if you fit in with everybody else and everyone else is like doing a particular thing, like if you don't stand out, you won't get exiled, basically. And it makes sense. And if you're in a pretty oppressive system, like he was coming out of Nazi Germany and he a psychologist who was trying to figure out what was that all about? How did that happen? Let's make sure that never happens again. So he had this idea of automaton conformity, where you just sort of give up that power and those choices to a group identity. So you don't make those choices. You don't have like any incentive to deconstruct what it is that your structure and your belief system and how you form your life. You give up that power for group identity. And you think it keeps you safe. It doesn't. It's a strategy that we all kind of adopt at some point or another. I remember in the 6th grade, I decided that I was going to be popular this year. I think I'm going to say that again in 2025. I'm going to be popular this year. I want to find my people. I want to find my audience. But this time around, I have a clear sense of my own identity. And in the 6th grade, I just saw a group of beautiful girls and I was jealous, honestly, but I was like, I want to be popular like them. What are they doing? How are they so confident? And I pretended and I wanted to dress like them. And one day I saw what they got for lunch and I got the same lunch as them because I wanted to be like them. They were so cool and so pretty and popular and like, wow. And I remember my friend was like, okay, I'm going to help you be popular. I'm popular. I'm going to help you do it. And he was like, just go sit over there at lunch. Go sit at the table with the popular girls. And they were just friendly to me. And then I realized that they were talking about stuff and people and lives. I just didn't know these girls. I wanted so bad to be a part of the group, the popular girls, but like, I don't know them. I'm just jealous of people who have stuff I think I need. I don't know. I went to a school that had a lot of very wealthy people, and I am really glad that I was like very early on, just like this experience of being, you can just get to know people if you want to get to know people, and like you shouldn't try to get to know people based on the basis of wanting to fit into their group or like being jealous of what they have. Like that's also my friend who was like, I'm popular, I'm gonna help you be popular. He just had a pool. The answer was he just had a pool. So people came and hung out at his house because we were kids and we liked that sort of thing. Anyways, that experience of I want to dress like them, I want to eat the same food as them, I want to fit in with them, I want to be a part of their group. I don't like any of those things. They're just people with preferences that you may or may not have. Automaton conformity.
You see this profound wish to control someone else, even though the other person is like, it's not me, it doesn't feel good, even though the other person is doing maybe what they want them to do, but it's out of pure obligation. And I think most of us, I mean, I hope it's still most of us, would look at that and be like, I don't want somebody doing something because they feel obligated, right? But if you are committed to a fantasy, if you are committed to a sort of delusion or indoctrination that has been fed to you, and you don't want to grieve that fantasy, you don't care that everyone else is just doing it out of obligation. You are desperate to have that fantasy reinforced. So the fantasy, if we take the boomer mom who gave up her entire life, okay, most of them gave up their entire lives for their children. Some of them worked, but at least while we were young, I think that generation was largely at home with us. They were offered a fantasy. The deal that they were offered was, by their mothers and the mothers before them, the deal that they were offered was, if you raise these children, if you stay home, if you do all this labor that is not fun and is really hard, and you give up a lot, if you do this, your children will serve you as you have served your mother and your mother-in-law, right?
I think it's frustrating I think it like lacks a fundamental sense of emotional availability and empathy, but do your duty. And everyone should do their duty. But some people don't do their duty, and it seems like they get away with it. And some of them actually kind of seem happy, and that leads to bitterness. And the Bible tells us not to let a root of bitterness grow up. It will turn into, I see. A bitterness is like anger or jealousy, that like, why do you get to be happy? Why do you get to make choices for yourself? Why do you get to do this whenever I do my duty? I do the good thing, and I see that you're not doing it. And sometimes this can feel like a protector role. So if you lived in a household where if your mom got really, really mad if you left stuff in the washer and did not move your laundry, and she would like freak out and yell and like have a whole big scene about how you didn't move your laundry precisely on time all the time. Maybe that happens to you, and then you start micromanaging your little sister's laundry and making sure that she doesn't make mom fly off the handle. But mom's flying off the handle because she's trying to prevent dad from flying off the handle. Like, everyone's sort of like keeping this fundamental anger and bitterness and resentment in check by just like checking each other. So we have a relationship where we're like, if you perform your duty, mommy won't get mad. And then you go to college and then you treat your roommate like that, and your roommate is like, hey man, mommy's not gonna yell at us, you're acting weird. But it takes a really long time to figure out that like your micromanaging of other people's behavior is about some lady who doesn't live with you anymore. You know, like it's a whole cycle that keeps on going. So like, duty is something that it feels like you enforce on other people it's like a fear response. Like you're trying to prevent everyone getting in trouble. But what it turns into is this like attitude or posture towards the world where you're fundamentally trying to prevent a man from being violent or scary or like abandoning everyone, because men are scary. So you have all these people working in this dysfunctional way to kind of like keep in check this one social role that doesn't have to take accountability for his actions. So it starts to look like everyone needs to do their duty and please mommy, who's trying to please daddy, who's trying to please boss man, who's trying to please CEO, who's trying to please shareholder, that like everyone is getting squeezed, like kind of. It's just too much.
This Christmas, any gifts my husband got were gifts for him, while any gifts I got were for my child. I have a lot of hobbies, interests, and passions, and those seem to be going out the window, but my husband, he can maintain his. Do you know what I mean? Like, people still see him as a full person, and right now people just see me as Oslo's mom, but I miss being Alina. Do you know what I mean?
It's just too much. So that sense of duty that's fundamentally rooted in, I want to say patriarchy, but it's deeper than that. Because honestly, why are we so scared of men? We are where all the men come from. We are the house that built them. We are where all the people come from. So why are we so... If the man isn't held responsible for his actions, it's easier for him to gain status in his community, and status is value, and value is property, and property is, you have to listen to me. I win. I'm right. This is true. And that's how you colonize a whole nation.
Corporate culture is white supremacy. Privileged white people do not get it. They do not understand culture. It's the system. As much as it benefits them, it also cripples them in the way of like them not having the emotional knowledge to understand what the rest of us are going through. The opportunity didn't come with an actual salary. It didn't come with anything. And then it also came with like headaches and like KPIs that I had to fucking keep up with every single day. I was getting paid like almost nothing. Even though I would do this work for free because it is something that I'm very passionate about. But I shouldn't have to, especially when you have all this access. But if you could take some of that money and Robin Hood that shit away from these white men and get it into some communities that need it, I'm encouraging it. If the project is more about your ego and you want everyone to think that you did everything on your own, okay, congratulations. Do you want a cookie? Like, do you want to make real change, or do you want people just to think that you're the shit? It didn't really feel like she understood the communities that I was trying to talk about. For her, communities mean like Hallmark towns, places where she would be comfortable. And that's all well and fine and good. Love a little Stars Hollow. Those aren't the towns that need you. And if your company focus is on uplifting communities, start with the communities that really need the uplifting. The type of organization that makes me feel like I have to put on a mask in order to survive is not the place for me. One thing we're not doing in 2025 is allowing someone to dictate what we say and do and think and feel. And I don't say things to hurt people. Can't have my tongue held any longer. I'm not fucking Ariel.
If you like this kind of thing, please subscribe to the channel. Grow with us. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks so much.
The bitterness of our parents and grandparents, that they performed a duty, yet we do not. It makes them really mad. Over and over and over again, every single video I see online of someone expressing their frustration that someone isn't performing their duty, their social role, isn't getting out of the house, isn't finding a job, getting married, moving next door in the suburbs, even though the house next door is unaffordable and is owned by BlackRock.
So I really feel like there's no consequence whatsoever we can put on them when they're not working, when they're refusing to go to therapy or take medication, when they're smoking pot all day long.
She doesn't care the way she needs to care. She doesn't care the way you raised her to care. She doesn't care to try to hurt you to get her way. And that's where you have to set the boundaries. It's okay. You did everything you could do to provide for her. You took care of her. You brought her into this world. And the disrespect and the audacity for her to say what she said, no. Mama, you've got to draw the line.
Although the adult child was the one to ultimately walk away, their parent was never willing to change or take necessary accountability to keep them around. That was literally possibly the most trashiest opinion I have ever read on here because, as you know, the people on my wall have tried to take accountability. They have tried to go to therapy. They have tried to talk to their children. Absolute Twilight Zone. I'm not going to promote that person because that is the idiocy that our kids are presented with in 2024. And if it's not on TikTok, it's in actual therapist's office. Absolute trash bag of a human.
And why do they get to judge us as parents and say, oh, you traumatized me? It blows me away of how many people on this app have messaged me and commented to me about what an amazing parent they were to their kids and how ungrateful those little bastards have become. And why do they get to judge us?
Although the adult child was the one to ultimately walk away, their parent was never willing to change or take necessary accountability to keep them around.
The broader picture, the looking outside of yourself to see, is so hard because you're so attached to the duty given to you by the social role that you agreed to. You are mother and nothing else. You're wife and nothing else. It's all or nothing. These kids are making us angry, but you are a woman a lot of the time, so you can't actually be angry. Women are sweet. So that anger is filtered through the performative obligation in the performative obligation that it traps them again into not feeling their own feelings, into saying that this anger, that you get to do something that I didn't get to do, it just gets trapped right again. And the trapping and the filter of it, a lot of times I keep seeing women alone in their homes with no one else around, still performing, with no one around, still not allowed to be angry. So resentment starts to form, a crust of and that anger and that filter. It just is bogging this person down. The envy, the sin of saying, I have status, and that is more important than our humanity. And my status is that I'm entitled to certain things. You are not respecting that status. And you are saying that you are entitled to think that I know because I'm a propertied person with status in this community and a man who I have supported and who have taken all of the blame from, and taken that blame and turned it into responsibilities for my children. Blame for my children. A child to not worry about the lost one. A child to blame the scapegoat. A child to just squish their little cheeks. That's the golden child. The child to give the responsibilities to. That's the poor hero. They do such a good job. Everyone just does such a good job that you forget that the status is kind of a lie. Good job. Sorry you're envious of our ability to find an imagination to think something differently could be possible, but the way that we got here was so much grief. And we watched everything we loved fall and crumble, every institution fall and crumble before our eyes. Like, if you want to think that we were inside of them, tearing them down ourselves, you definitely think I'm mighty more powerful than I ever thought I was, and I appreciate that. I will convert that blame into energy and power because you think that my love of avocados crashed the housing market, and I'd like to think that that might be true in some sort of miracle of magic. If I had a firmer handshake, no one would have gotten laid off last year. I'd love to think that all of this is in my control, but I just know that it's not. Envy, resentment easily turns to vengeance.
Your children will be devoted. This will all pay off in this magical relationship where your children's lives will start to center around you and center you as you have killed yourself, centering your children and centering you and your husband's parents. And so they did that. And they didn't think about, or I mean, I don't know how much they thought about, but how much they hated it and how they didn't enjoy it, and it was never questioned. And I don't think there was enough information, right? There wasn't a collective like we have now questioning this box that they all walked into. And instead of the boomer going, oh my God, you're right, it was all a lie. No one wants to grieve that they were conned, okay? The grief that comes with being conned is really, really, really painful. It's very necessary if you're going to heal, but it's very painful, and many people will avoid it. If you can't sit with grief of the fantasy being a lie, and you can't look at the system above you and realize like, oh my God, this was all a lie, you have to get rageful and angry at everyone around you. It's like a cult. You get rageful and angry at everyone around you who is not complying with the fantasy because they're making you see it.
I've gone to a college that just shut down one day. It doesn't matter what your grades are. I did have some books checked out of the library, and so they're mine now. The promise was broken, and that's sort of been the experience of a lot of millennials, is the promise was broken. But for our parents, or for just generations before us after World War II, a lot of World War II America, like, came out okay. War is terrible. Don't recommend it. We should not do it. War is bad. There's a lot of money in being put into the American people during that time. And if you worked hard, maybe you could, like, make enough money to have a house or a family, or maybe live after on one income. And the economy was really booming, and there was a lot of babies. We call these the boomers. And they really believe in duty, in doing your obligation. And, like, someone's got to. I understand it. Like, I'm not that way, but I've never had an incentive to. But I'm trying to empathize with the fact that if you studied hard for the test, then you made an A. If that happened every single time, I literally have dyslexia. It does not happen for me. It makes me so frustrated. I studied for test so much. I can't. It's neither here nor there. If it always happened that way, like, I could see where you just think that's how the world works. If we can just look just a little bit further beyond our little families and our little lives and our little thoughts, you might see that our land has been plundered, our labor exploited, and all of us are now in the narcissistic abuse cycle being discarded.
It's got nothing to do with work ethic, dude. Kids don't want to work in the trades anymore because you're not paying them shit and you're rude to them all day.
The tech job market has dried up. It says that this is an irreversible trend and that graduates are facing a money pinch over the next 4 years because they cannot find an opportunity. Tech companies laid off over 37,000 people since January.
Unlike the machinery, the means of production for the labor of the men who we will sacrifice is produced by the labor of the women, whom seem to regenerate in a way that is not controlled by the capitalist. This particular trick creation prevents total control of the proletariat. But if we can create division between these women, these means of production, they will forget that they can regenerate themselves. The woman will forget that she is the origin point of all humanity. The woman will forget that she is the origin point for all humanity. I am the origin point for all humanity, and you are the origin point for all humanity. I think that's worth remembering. I just got chills. She will forget that she has sanity and common sense in this crazy world. She will forget, and we will distract her, says the capitalist. We will distract her with tests of her obedience, tests of her ability to conform. We need to demonize poor people so that they have less charity, and then we can remove their children for neglect or poverty, and then place these children with childless middle-class women who may assimilate them into polite society. Then the plan would be to sterilize the poor parents and eventually use their defective lineage as the moral basis by which the state constitutes a genocide. The capitalists need to spill the blood of a generation to maintain power. But you may think, what a vile, vile plan. No one sane person would allow you to walk down the street with that kind of a plan. Why, you might be shot in broad daylight, and then everyone would cheer. Couldn't get away with it. But the capitalists, this devil demands blood. Divide and conquer. Find those who would cheer. This is a war for the morality and human decency that would foil our plans to leave desolate a place that we are done pillaging. One last sacrifice, says the capitalist. One last generation. We just need one last generation's youthful blood. Do you remember the mother? Do you remember the mother that gives responsibilities to the children? If someone in that family takes those responsibilities and says, I can do it, I'm a hero, I can do my duty, and I will. That person forgets that they are the origin point of all of humanity. That they are pleasing an authority who has no business telling them what to do. They are pleasing an authority who has no obligation to keep them safe, to keep them warm, to hold them close, to comfort them when things are hard, to care about them, to know their interest. You're pleasing a system that is crumbling. If you want to do that, that's okay. I'm not here to judge. Please don't forget. You're the whole earth. You imitate Mother Nature. You have mountains, little valleys, your little nooks and crevices and beautiful features. And that you're so amazing. And when you look at another girl, another woman, some of you I've seen looking at children and saying, they have something I don't have. I deserve it. Baby, this whole thing's crumbling. Take, for instance, the symbolism of those two great spiritual stories. Whether we count them as myths or mysteries, the Christian who is inclined to sympathize generally with the constituted authority will think of rebellion under the image of Satan, the rebel against God. So like the boomer. Rebellion is like you're being Satan and you're rebelling against God, which is them, I guess. I don't know. The rebel against God. But Satan, though a traitor, was not an anarchist. He claimed the crown of the cosmos. Had he prevailed, he would have expected his rebel angels to have given up rebelling. On the other hand, the Christian whose sympathies are more generally with just self-defense among the oppressed will think rather of Christ himself defying the high priest and scourging the rich traitors. So, like, you're okay to rebel if it's against something that's actually morally bad. So, if we're rebelling against social roles, is it because we're like Jesus or is it because we're like the devil? I don't know. That's a question for us to all think on. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. It's been really fun to, like, be in the studio and be with you guys and, like, share what my thoughts are and what's on my mind. And I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Please keep it kind. Subscribe, like. I'll see you next time. Sweet dreams.